is Tiffany Fisher. I just started my third term as councilperson in Hoboken, New Jersey. Thank you for allowing all of us to speak today on what is a complicated and difficult issue. Just before I get into my comments, which I think will be a little different than some of the other people here, I just wanted to touch on some of what has already been mentioned, because I think embedded in this, the real intent of this is to make a process easier and protect some of the interests of people that we hadn't really thought about. You know, some people mentioned access to children's records, etc. Like those, you know, that I think scares a lot of us for, you know, all the reasons that we see on the internet these days. So I think there's laudable and supportable reasons to look for making those changes. But as one of the prior speakers mentioned, I feel like that this legislation strives to make some of those changes, but does so at the expense of the public by limiting their access to data. And I think another speaker mentioned that we really should focus on making it easier and better and for municipalities and state and government agencies to provide not only access to information, but the right access to information. And that's not what this does. Chairman Sarlo mentioned that this is a modernization of OPRA. It doesn't feel like a modernization. It actually feels like we're going backwards in time significantly. Because I think there's a lot of types of changes that you can promote and support that really will move us more towards the environment that we live in, which is having that minute-by-minute access to every piece of information. All of us want that. We all have a smartphone in our hand more times during the day than we want. We all hit Google multiple times in a day looking for information, and rolling back OPRA in the way that's being proposed, notwithstanding the goals that it's trying to address, really takes us like in a totally different direction than the world that we all live in today. And lastly, I do feel very strongly about this. In Hoboken, we're renowned for having task force that are set up with people that all support the leader of the task force position, as opposed to actually having a task force that has real debate. And it sounds like the agencies that were considered to help draft this legislation really didn't involve people that actually use OPRA to make their requests. And I would similarly support tabling this today and really considering bringing some of those people to the table. It's only going to take this bill and make it better. It's not something that legislative elected officials should be afraid of. They should invite that type of input, because the more, I'm known for saying more voices are better, and the more voices you have at the table, the better outcome you're going to get. You're going to have a piece of legislation that achieves the goals you're looking for, but also addresses people with disparate views. So I actually touched on a little bit of what I wanted to read, but I'm going to read some of this at least. So as I mentioned, I started my third term on the Hoboken City Council. I'm sure, like myself, many of you feel the same. I find it a privilege to be an elected official. People we know, our friends and neighbors, and many we don't know, go to the polls on election day to cast a vote for us to represent them, trusting us to protect and promote their best interests. And to me, serving their interests is what public service and being in an elected role is all about. And that's why I'm struggling to understand why you're considering a piece of legislation that is actually contrary to the interests of the people we serve. In fact, this proposed legislation really feels more like it is serving special interests than it is, and doing so at the expense of the public, which is the exact opposite of public service. As I mentioned earlier, the world's changed. Information is available within seconds and at our fingertips on just about any issue you can think. Everything is basically one Google search away. People's expectations for information access has changed with 24/7 news, the internet, and social media, and yes, it changed more quickly than government has been able to keep up. But restricting access to information like this bill doesn't solve that problem. It actually only makes it worse. We heard from the speaker just before who mentioned that by not allowing certain types of requests, it potentially increases the burden on the local county and state government. And it means going backwards in time to an era of less transparency and information. The questions aren't gonna go away, they're just gonna be redirected. And it makes it easier for government officials to be less accountable for their actions. And that, to me, as someone who has fought, against corruption, for good government, for transparency, I want to be held more accountable for my actions. I don't want laws changed that make it easier for me to be less accountable. Like many of you, I've been served with many OPRA requests, some of which are incredibly annoying, including one by Hoboken's business administrator. Yes, Hoboken's business administrator submitted an OPRA request to me last week instead of just picking up the phone and calling. Most of the requests, though, that come to me relate primarily to property legal cases, sometimes property interests, and sometimes politics. I've had emails I sent OPRA'd by a competitor and used against me in elections. And did I say I know it can be annoying? Yes. But regardless, we answer them because we're public servants, elected by the public and paid by taxpayers. For those with nothing to hide, OPRA is just an annoying tool that keeps us accountable for what we say and do in our elected roles. For those with something to hide, OPRA lets them know corrupt practices and backroom deals. To me, that is the crux here, and again, maybe different than some of the other speakers, but the basic litmus test to me for any law that you're considering, whether it's in the broader public's, is whether it's in the broader public's interest. If the answer is no, then it either needs to be tossed aside or reworked with that goal in mind. The proposed bill before you today is not in the public's best interest. It is for special interests, and it can only be seen as protecting those. But this bill can be reworked so that it is in the public's best interest. Many members of the public have ideas on how to do this. You've heard many today. But at its core, it is not providing $8 million of funding to constrict OPRA. It is creating legislation that requires towns and government agencies to upgrade to 21st century technologies to make it easier for the public to access governmental records. You may have seen that New York City has already done this for many of their departments. If the true goal is to relieve the burden of OPRA requests, then let's do that with technology. We're a state that's rooted in technology, so let's partner with private sector companies to solve this issue. I can vouch for the Hoboken City Clerk's office, who's burdened with not 500 to 3,000 OPRA requests, as one of the counties mentioned, but thousands of OPRA requests every year. As you know, zoning and property type requests are often at the top of the list of types of information people are looking for. In Hoboken, not unlike Jersey City, I know Mayor Fulop would have said similarly, is a city with significant property development going on right now. And Hoboken has been working over the past several years to upgrade its technology and move its records online very specifically to address OPRA requests. But these steps have actually extended the benefit of operational efficiencies within our local government. We know that technology does this, so why not consider that path instead? If the true goal is not to relieve the burden of OPRA requests, but rather to make government officials less accountable to the public, then let's be honest about that. Governor Murphy hinted yesterday that he believes in transparency, but pragmatic transparency. I winced when I read that. That's what autocrats say, that's not what Democrats say. To me, it's very straightforward. Gutting OPRA, giving more discretion to say. Yeah, one sentence. I'm sorry. I was trying to speak fast. I literally one sentence.
We were trying to give it a good thing, but I think you're looking for the flaws.
To me, it's fairly straightforward. Gutting OPRA, giving more discretion to say no to an OPRA request, and having a biased group decide what kind of documents can be shared just gives more protection of people with something to hide. And that doesn't pass the litmus test for what the public service is about, and I hope you'll agree with that. Thank you.